Well, if you're listening to us, one of the things that you probably have some concern about may not be your focus today, but it's on your agenda is how long am I going to live and what am I going to do to pay my way when I can no longer work? How long am I going to work? There's all sorts of questions associated with retirement. My name's Don Creech.
And I'm Terry Sykes, and welcome to the Investor Resources Podcast.
So there's a number of things that are involved in retiring successfully, one of which is good health. There's nothing we can do about that for you. You must do that yourself. However, there's a lot of science that's working on your behalf to make it easier to maintain good health. It may not be our national health system, but in the research on demographics and what it takes to have a long, healthy life, there are a lot of new discoveries, which is the reason for the title that we have, The Blind See. As we were preparing to do this, Perry reviewed some information that he'd recently read about experiments that made mice blind, and then they reversed it so the mice could see again. And that has huge implications for us as human beings.
It does. It's massive. And by the way, that was work done by Dr. David Sinclair out of Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. And they let lab mice go blind from old age, essentially, and then restored their sight. And so once they realized that they could actually physically turn back the clock on a complex biological system like eyesight, it was like, well, wow. So we can turn back the clock on virtually any biological system in the body if we can make eyes work again, which they already have, and publish that, by the way. So that really does, raise the specter of, if you, as they say, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And now how long you live may be a choice you just get to make in the not too distant future, and not just whatever happens to you. So that's probably coming up shortly.
So on the weekend show here in Seattle, both on a couple of different conservative talk stations, there's a program, Longevity Medical, and they discuss their business, which is helping people stay young, healthy, and active, and lead worthwhile lives. This is an expanding business around the country, we know, and I assume probably around the world also.
Sure.
And so, but we're a finance-related firm. We're investment managers. So how does that relate to all of this stuff that's going on? Well, the fact is that if you're in your 40s, you may in fact be seeing the real result of this coming into mainstream medicine over the next decade or so, or maybe sooner. If you're in your 80s, it's probably a little late to be looking at age 100 saying that's a high probability. We don't know what that time frame is, but what we do know is when you retire, you still need income. You still need food, shelter. You probably need some entertainment. You need clothing. Those things require money in some sort of format. And how do people get it? There are three ways. Well, there's more than three, I guess. One of which is, and this is the one that generates the largest amount of wealth for dollars involved as a usual rule, which is own your own business. You create a business and you build that business up. Sure. And you, as long as that business is generating cash flow, you build freedom. That's part of what makes the American capitalistic system so exceptional. If you're not going to do that, you're going to set money aside, then you need money that's going to accumulate and expand at a rate greater than the rate of inflation. And typically, people have three choices. Cash, but we know cash doesn't keep up with inflation. Interest rate's not high enough. When you have a high interest rate, inflation's still higher as a general rule. You have bonds, same kind of problem. The rate of return is nominal, it's low, it's not enough generally to keep track of inflation, keep up with it. And then you have equities. Now, I left the real estate out because most people don't end up with enough rental real estate to support themselves. So you have your house, you got to pay for that. Even if it's paid for, you have to have the money to pay for taxes, insurance, and maintenance, which the longer you live in the house, the bigger the maintenance bill is going to be. Back. Oh, yeah. And I speak personally of that. We've had some major issues in our house over the last 3 years. And I was discussing that with some friends here yesterday. And I was thinking about it. The cost of maintenance on this house because of some sinking and flooding is 50% of what I spent building the house. I didn't want another building project. This was a salvage project.
That's never in the plan. Yeah, that's never in the plan. You're going to spend half the cost of building it to keep it intact, but that can happen.
So what are you going to do to build that income up? And that basically you have no choice but to own equities, which leaves you with the conundrum of, I want high returns and I don't want risk. Ever been there?
You hear that a lot. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And you know, if you're just buying CDs, you're going to have significantly less risk accompanied with significantly less return. And so if you're going to be living, kind of an average lifespan, which seems to keep increasing, you're going to have to own equities just to keep your buying power intact, let alone maybe grow some more comfort and some more safety into your retirement longevity by producing more than you're spending, which is much easier with equity returns than it is with fixed income.
Which means that you've been fed a whole series of lies about how you should manage your stock or your stock market portfolio.
Absolutely.
So one of those is you should be broadly diversified. Well, the problem with that is broad diversification is a drag on returns. You really need to be focused on parts of the market that are doing well and willing to change when the market changes. So the buy and hold works well if you know in advance you have 100-year lifespan and you start saving for that when you're in your digital years, 1 through 5. Nobody saves money when you're back there. Typically, right. People don't start saving money, seriously saving money until they're in their 40s and 50s. When you get past the child rearing commitments that you made with having a family.
There you go.
So you don't have 100 years to save the money to live to 100. And if you're saving it in the bank, savings institution, or in bonds because you want slow and steady, you just simply have to save a ton of money, which means you're going to reduce your current lifestyle substantially in order to have a large enough pool of money to make it through an extended retirement period. What's your other choice? Your other choice is you have to take risk. And it's not that real estate doesn't have risk. My goodness, my former attorney is a major real estate developer. And during one of the recessionary downturns that the Seattle Puget Sound area had over the last couple of decades, he almost went bankrupt. I mean, for a guy who had built himself from zero coming out of college to a multi-millionaire, to be faced with bankruptcy was a very scary thing, because his everything he'd spent his life on was about to go away. Well, he managed to get through it because he was smart, agile, and he changed what he was doing to adapt to conditions. And he shared me a couple of ideas. He's basically said, there's a couple of things I'm never, ever going to do with real estate again. And he listed them. We're not going to go through those here. That's not our job. But when you're talking about the stock market, now the people have a generally built-in fear that I don't know how I'm going to make it through the next stock market downturn. Well, if you know that you're actually investing for your retirement and it's not a function of what you're doing to support your current lifestyle, you must make a different decision during a downturn instead of just hanging on to it, which is the assumption that the market basically, or the market environment basically says you should do. That's how you look at the stock market.
Sure.
Long term, quit worrying about the downturns and stay in. Except that the downturns can be avoided substantially, not entirely, but they can be mitigated. And if you mitigate the extent of a downturn on your portfolio, that's a lot more important than being invested at the bottom for the 10 best days of the market. I mean, there's another
Correct.
myth in the financial industry.
Big one.
It's much more important to miss the 10 worst days of the market. Now, that does not mean you're a market timer, because there are no successful market timers except some lucky flukes along the way.
You can get it right once in a while. You can't get it right time and time again. And it's important to remember there's also not one thing you're supposed to do during a market downturn. Well, here's what you do every time during a market downturn. You sell all your stocks and you buy all fixed income. That's not the answer. The answer is always going to be something different depending on the nature of the downturn. Something's going to be doing well. Other things are going to be doing significantly worse. And like you said, Don, you have to be adaptable. You have to be paying attention, see what's going on, and adapt to the conditions that you're in. That's how you can really mitigate risk, not by having some formula that says, well, here's what you do during a downturn, and you adhere to that blindly, no matter what's going on. You have to look at what's going on in the market and make your changes appropriately to what those changes are, and not generalities that may make you feel better in between time, make you feel like you have a go-to plan, but you have no idea whether that's going to be successful or not. You need to be adaptable.
So the industry trains us and tells you that you start at the high end of high level of view. So you look at asset classes, and that, broadly speaking, that's stocks. There's a sub-asset class of U.S. stocks and international stocks. The international is broken into developed countries and emerging market countries. And then you have an asset class for fixed income, and that's broken up into corporate, government, and international. And then you have commodities, and that's broken up into metals, industrials, and agriculture. Well, just because the U.S. market happens to be having a struggle for a period of time doesn't mean that every other country in the world is suffering at the same time.
Correct.
Maybe they are, but if they are, then perhaps that's where agriculture or precious metals or industrial metals, there's another part of the capitalist marketplace full of opportunity that should be examined, reviewed on an ongoing basis, so that you're prepared to deal with some bad news when it shows up. Rather than, I'm just going to buy a whole bunch of everything and pray it all works. And once a quarter, I'll rebalance. I'll sell my winners and buy my losers. Well, the sales pitch is, what I'm doing is I'm buying bargains. Well, you don't know they're bargains until they quit losing money. And you don't know that when you're just doing a periodic rebalancing.
You never know when that is. You never know how far down can be, which is why every market's individual, every security in that market is going to react differently, and you just need to pay attention. And you can follow the money, and if something is not working for you, don't keep doing it. That's the key. If you're, like they say, if you find yourself at the bottom of a hole, at least stop digging, and that's the best way to find your way out.
So within the U.S. market at the current time, that's really a function, it's just not the current time, it's whatever time, is to pay attention to which sectors of the market are doing well. And within each sector, there's 11 major sectors. Each one of them has sub-industries, subsectors. And those industries, some of them will do well and some of them won't. There's no point in owning everything just so that you don't miss out on something that works occasionally.
Sure.
Pay attention. Do not be afraid to rotate. As you just said, if it's not working, quit digging the hole. Let's get out of there and buy something else that's going up. And that requires a change in the way you think about being invested in the stock market. But that's exactly what we do. And it's taken some real time and discipline and study to figure out that as financial advisors, investment advisors, managing portfolios, that a lot of what we are trained through the industry is sales marketing material rather than portfolio management theory. Actual decisions must be made, not because you know the future, but because you understand that there's a change going on within your portfolio holdings right now. And is that change serious, or is it noise and disruption, just temporary disruption? That's a process you learn over time. If you want to talk about that and your portfolio, give us a call, contact us, subscribe to our podcast. The subscribe button's down there somewhere on the screen. That way you won't miss our next session. But we will be back with more information that we hope you find interesting. Have a great day and great success with your portfolio.